cut price illicit cigarettes continue to flood the market. And not only is Treasury losing out on revenues which should be paid on cigarettes which are legally manufactured, imported, traded in South Africa, also it appears that the increasing availability of very cheap cigarettes is persuading more people to smoke and persuading fewer people to quit smoking. We're joined now by Professor Lekan Ayo-Yusuf, head of the Africa Centre for Tobacco Industry Monitoring and Public Policy Research at the University of Pretoria via Zoom. Prof, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, John. Good afternoon to your listeners.
Thank you. For a while, it looked as if the prevalence of cigarette smoking in South Africa was declining, and I remember that happening throughout the first decade and most of the second decade of this century. But that's reversed, has it?
Yes, unfortunately, that has reversed. We've started seeing that reverse there about 2012, and slowly it sort of plateaued without increasing until about 2021.
I don't know whether you stopped talking or whether the communication channel let us down. What happened in 21?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. So it started increasing again in 21, which is about when cheap cigarettes became freely available during COVID.
That's correct. That was the catalytic period in terms of illicit smoking. However, the nuances about smoking needs to be clarified. When we measure smoking in terms of anybody who uses any smoked product, be it Hobly or cigarettes or roll your own. So what we picked up was that cigarette did not increase so much as Hobly's and people who roll their own cigarette. It became much more contribution to the smoking prevalence increase. But however, cigarettes smoking also increased, but not to the large extent like Hobly's.
Okay, and do you put vaping in that same category, or does it have a category of its own?
Vaping has a separate category because vapes are not combusted, so they're in the category of non-combusted or nicotine products rather than the tobacco products. But we also see an increase in vaping over that period. In fact, it was quite phenomenal because we've been following vaping since 2010. So in the last 15 years, the last we measured was last year in March. Vaping moved from something like 0.4% to about 7.7%. And in particular, among those who are younger than 35, it's as high as 13%. That is one out of every 9 adults, young people.
How does the South African situation compare with, I don't know, countries like us, countries not like us? Is this a global trend, or is the global trend neutral or a downward trend in smoking?
Unfortunately, globally, smoking is on a downward trend. South Africa is pretty different from the rest of the world, and in particular from Africa, where smoking has been reducing.
Why? That's the important question is why. Why are we smoking more why are we smoking more when the rest of the world is smoking less?
So South Africa has been a leader in global tobacco control. However, its law, which preceded the benchmark for what you need to do to control smoking, that's our 1995 or 1993 Act, has not been reviewed since that time. So it's over 30 years old. While other countries have reviewed the law and put in much more stronger measures to discourage the demand for smoking, and of course to reduce the supply for smoking. So both ways, South Africa is losing out. We've not updated our laws, and we've not been very enforceful around reducing supply, which we used to have when the SARS had a very strong illicit control unit prior to 2014, when that unit was essentially dismantled. So we have a double whammy, old laws to reduce demand, and a sort of a weakened SARS to control supply. And that's why we have this unique situation in South Africa.
Well, I believe that unit is being reconstituted. I mean, it's going to take some time, if it ever gets to the degree of efficiency and impact that it had in that 2014 period. But that is happening.
Indeed.
Given the cost of legal cigarettes, do we need anything more than perhaps increased excise duties on cigarettes plus that effective anti-illicit tobacco unit? Do we need a new law? If you do think we need a new law, what should be in that new law?
Most certainly, first of all, we definitely need to tighten up the supply chain. We have to do both. And that's what the best practice and has shown, that if you control supply and at the same time reduce demand, put in demand measures or demand reduction measures, you get a much better. If you do just one of the two, it's not as effective. So what we need to do is to pass the current bill, which has proposed, for example, restricting public smoking, therefore denormalizing smoking, which is now almost becoming so normal. That's including public use in public places. And of course, as SARS continues to actually, SARS can do something now, the law enforcement, because in South Africa, 80%, and make South Africa unique, 80% of its illicit cigarettes are produced in South Africa by licensed SARS manufacturers. So it's just a matter of taking this very serious, which is so serious. We imagine about 10 billion rand lost, and South Africa is looking for 18 billion every time, or 20 billion to balance its budget. You can just tighten cigarettes. So I really still do not understand why the law enforcement is not doing this, because we all know that these cigarettes are coming from South Africa. And on the other hand, we have been discussing the demand measures of the bill for the last 7 years. It's sitting in the parliament. We can do something as South Africa to change the course and the trajectory of smoking.
Thank you very much, Professor Lekan Ayo-Yusuf, Head of the Africa Centre for Tobacco Industry Monitoring and Policy Research at the University of Pretoria.